This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all your devices. And you can get a special price right now by going to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. And we're going to talk about a story in a little while where a VPN would have been wildly helpful, but but for now, let's talk about cryptocurrency, Avram.
Yes, so crypto is everywhere these days, and I'm sure people are very familiar with Bitcoin and possibly Etherium, which seems to be the number 2 to Bitcoin. Maybe they've heard about Dogecoin, because Dogecoin has been touted by Elon Musk a lot. But there's a new game in town. It is called Chia Coin. And Chia Coin is interesting because Chia Coin works differently than any other cryptocurrency. Now, before I go any farther with this, I want to say any kind of involvement with crypto is inherently very risky. I do not endorse you spending money on this. Some folks will, but I want to just let people know what shit is, because it's interesting technically and it's going to have an interesting effect on the market, but it's not necessarily a good investment of your time and money. That's for you to figure out. So Chia is different in that most cryptocurrency, or pretty much I think all other cryptocurrency, uses a concept called proof of work. In other words, you have your computer or farm of computers working really hard, and then doing calculations, and then you mine a coin, and that coin is worth money. And it could take you hours or days or more to mine a coin. And the question always is, of course, are you spending more on electricity and hardware to mine that coin than the coin is actually worth? So, are you profiting? And of course, in the Bitcoin realm, they actually have computers that are not even PCs that are made just to mine Bitcoin. But in Ethereum and Dogecoin and those, it's graphics cards that are doing the hard work. So that's why there's such shortages of graphics cards. Not only do people want them for gaming, but even old graphics cards, even some of the slower graphics cards, have exploded in value because professional miners are buying them. Now, Chia works differently. Chia uses proof of space and time. So what it does is it uses storage. You don't need a graphics card at all to farm Chia. You don't say mine Chia, you say farm Chia. And here's how it works. So you set up your computer to create something called Chia plots. Think of it almost like a real farm. You've got plots where you're planting your seeds. And it could take, this is primarily a CPU, memory, and storage intensive process. It can take 6-7 hours or more to create a single plot. And most of the serious Chia people are creating multiple plots at the same time. So it takes more than 6 or 7 hours, but it still works out that if they're creating like 10 plots at a time, it will be in their favor to be doing that many. So what happens? So you create your plots, and then you leave the plots on storage. And the plots don't have to be left on the same drive they were created on. In fact, what most people do is they create the plots on a PC with a fast SSD, and then they copy them over to hard drives, and sometimes it's external hard drives that they plug into a Raspberry Pi to keep those plots online. Because once the plots are created, they just have to stay online, and they don't need a lot of processing power to stay online. So what happens when they're online? Every few seconds throughout the day, there's a Chia transaction taking place. And every transaction, it randomly picks a plot. And if one of your plots is chosen, you get some Chia coin. So now, what happens if your plots are not chosen? You get nothing. So the people who are doing this are doing it based on kind of a law of averages. If I have enough plots, like hundreds or thousands of plots, my plots are going to come up, are going to, get chosen every so often, and it's going to work out for me. Now, one thing to know is that just because a plot has been chosen doesn't mean you should erase it, because it can be chosen again. So the goal is to just keep building more and more and more and more plots, and then leave them connected to the internet on a hard drive or really lower, more bulk type of storage, a hard drive, not necessarily an SSD, and wait for them to be chosen so you can collect some Chia coin. Right now, each Chia coin is worth $784. Now the problem is this is getting more popular. So where your odds were so 2 or 3 weeks ago, now the odds of an individual with just a few plots, just a few terabytes worth of plots. One plot is 102, about 108 gigabytes, right? So if you're getting like a 5 terabyte hard drive, maybe it'll be 48, maybe around 48 plots you can store on there. So you got to figure, okay, how many plots do I need to keep coming up and winning on a regular basis? The odds aren't great, but they are next week or the week after going to start a pooling system, as exists right now for Bitcoin and Ethereum and others, where everywhere there will be pools, and you can join in with hundreds or thousands of other people who only have a few plots, and each and will basically share in the earnings. So that's the gist of what Chia Coin is. The company that the Chia Foundation that is behind it touts the environmental friendliness of this currency, because it is a low power currency compared to something like Ethereum, because once you have built the plots, your hard drive sitting at idle and can be connected to a low power computer like a Raspberry Pi. So therefore, it's not using nearly as much electricity as something where you're constantly operating a computer at full bore with all of the the CPU and the GPU operating at the highest possible wattage.
That's fascinating. I guess a couple of questions on it. The first is, obviously the machines that are holding the plots have to be internet connected. Is there software that's running on those computers? Okay.
Yes. So we have an article, if anybody actually wants to see how this is done, we have a couple of articles on Tom's Hardware about this. We have one called How to Farm. We have many articles. We have How to Farm Chia Coin, and we actually have an article about how to farm Chia Coin specifically with Raspberry Pi. Now, I want to differentiate between plotting and farming. I mean, the whole process you could call farming, but you absolutely do not want, and we haven't even tried to create a plot on a Raspberry Pi, because that would probably take weeks or days to create one plot. But once you've created the plot, you copy it over to a hard drive, and then it can be on a lower power PC or a Raspberry Pi, and that does have to be connected to the internet 24/7. Now, what happens if you turn it off one day or your power goes out? Nothing, but you just don't have the chance to win during that time.
Got it.
Think of it like a bingo game. Numbers are getting called,
and you must be present to win.
You leave the room. Yeah. If you leave the room, okay, you left the room. So nobody takes your Chia coins away if they go offline. Like, once you've won, you've won. Now, the fact that you have to quote unquote win I have to admit, makes me a little uneasy. Like, at
Mhm.
least if you're Bitcoin mining, like, you mine this and you're going to get something, right? But
Assuming you get a block.
yeah, maybe that's the issue too, right?
Yeah, the assignment
maybe
of
it's not so
blocks
easy.
is the thing that's your luck of the draw on Bitcoin.
Okay, so I guess you can't be guaranteed to win anywhere. Nevertheless, there obviously are large companies. I mean, people forming large farms and
Mhm.
large mining communities, whatever, for all of these things. So there, I mean, this is a very controversial topic. First of all, is going where we had now already have graphics card shortages. People are worried about SSD shortages,
Yeah.
hard drive shortages, and they're not wrong. What we are seeing is tremendous, um, tremendous price hikes and shortages of 4 terabyte and larger SSDs. 1 and 2 terabyte, not so much, because you don't want. I mean, 2 terabyte is getting a little more expensive, I guess, but nobody wants to do this on a 1 terabyte. The other thing to keep in mind is, though you do want to plot it on an SSD because you need the speed when doing. You need fast write speed. You need fast sequential write speed to do this, but the an average consumer SSD is not a good idea. And in fact, the Chia Foundation recommends that people try to buy enterprise server SSDs to do it, because you have to. If you were buying an SSD for Chia, you want to look at the TBW of the drive. What is the total bytes written before the SSD will wear out? Maybe not everybody knows this, but your SSD has an expiration. After a certain amount of bytes written, terabytes written, an SSD can no longer, the NAND flash wears out, and you can no longer write to it. You can still, I guess, get your data back off and read from it, presumably, but you can no longer write to it. Now, that number is astronomically high. So for a normal person doing normal stuff, you will probably never have that situation. You most of the time you're just launching apps, and when you are writing, I mean, we're talking about 500, 1,000 terabytes written. That means if you had a 1 terabyte drive, you would have to write over the whole drive 1,000 times, right? The entire drive. So very unlikely scenario for a normal person doing normal computer things. But if you are building plots, and each plot, like, it takes up 108 gigabytes, but the actual space that it takes to build the plot in terms of writing and erasing things, I think is more like 3 or 4 or more times that. It might even be closer to 1 terabyte of data that is being written during the process. So yeah, it's very easy to kill your consumer grade SSD in a matter of, if you were doing a lot of plots, in a matter of days or weeks. So that's something to consider. We have on our best SSDs page a list of the best SSDs for Chia, and we're just looking at ones that are readily available consumer SSDs, and we're recommending 1,200 TBW for every 2 terabytes of drive. So a 2 terabyte drive should be 1,200, and a 4 terabyte drive should be 2,400. But even that is, if you just keep churning out plots, you will use up within a couple of months. If you're just churning out plots 24/7, there's an interesting question here, which is, at what point are you going to run out of hard drives? Because if you keep, like, your primary storage drive, you're not going to fill it up and get rid of it. What you're going to do is you're going to build a whole lot of plots on, and then you're going to copy them to hard drives, right? Or really inexpensive SSDs. And so if you keep building more plots and more plots every day, you're going to need to keep buying more hard drives every day or all the time, right? So you can see that the effect that it's going to have on the storage industry, and is already having on the storage industry. So it definitely does have an effect, but probably less so on the kind of sweet spot of 1 terabyte that a lot of people want to buy, 1 terabyte storage. And people really who are going to get serious about Chia are probably going to look for drives that have really high endurance, which right now are primarily enterprise drives, but there have been several companies that have said, hey, we're going to come out with special Chia drives that are made to do all of these writes.
Fascinating. Now, once I've created my plot, you say I can move it on to another drive. And how important is speed at that point?
So apparently you can use a 5400 RPM drive.
Okay.
Or even a external USB 3.0 drive. Now, we had John Michael Hans, who is the head of storage for Chia. He goes out and talks to storage vendors on behalf of the Chia Foundation.
Nice.
And what he said is that there's something like a 30-second, we had him on the Tom's Hardware show this week, and he said there's something like a 30-second or 40-second period that you have to respond if your plot is chosen. So if your system is super duper slow, there's a chance you could miss that, but I think they've found it doesn't have to read back the whole 108 gigabytes in that time period. It just has to send some type of some small amount of bytes back to say, hey, I found
amount of ACK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some amount of what?
ACK, acknowledgement.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, some sort of...
It has to acknowledge.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it has to acknowledge. So could you theoretically mount a cheap S3 drive and keep things there?
You mean a tape drive?
No, like an Amazon S3 drive.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Is it you mean in the cloud?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because you could mount a drive letter, right, to your computer using S3. I wonder if that would be fast enough.
I've never thought about that. I will. You know what? This is a fascinating question. I will write him a note and ask him if that works. What he did tell me is that it's specifically made for hard drives and SSDs and not other forms of storage. Now, we didn't discuss cloud storage because I didn't even think that was reasonably possible. But I'll ask. We asked him about tape. He said, as crazy as that sounds, we said, hey, could you, if you had a tape backup, could you put it on tape? And that's when he said, no, there wouldn't be enough time to respond and get the data off of the tape to meet the requirement.
Sure.
So,
because I would imagine, obviously with tape, for those who are younger, who are listening, having to physically spin tape to a certain point to be able to get the bit that you're looking for would likely be more than a 40-second gap window. But if you've got a network drive that's mounted, if you've got a NAS, right? And
it will work. It will work with NAS. But he did say there were some issues with that they've had to have with NAS vendors or whatever, where certain NASs have had issues with, but it's supposed to work with the network drive.
Okay,
so,
well,
yes.
If you were to mount an S3 as a network drive, it just shows up as the S drive or whatever. It might work. I definitely would love to hear what they have to say about that.
I will send him an email after this.
Awesome.
And I will get back to you about that because, we are. I mean, when we've written about this, we've gotten a lot of people coming in and asking about it because people are fascinated by new cryptocurrencies and the way that this one works. Again, I can't say that it's going to be immensely profitable for anyone. They are going to be starting pools, so that will make it a little bit more palatable for regular folks who don't want to buy a new hard drive every day and just have wall-to-wall hard drives eating up electricity for the hopeful possibility that some of your plots will be chosen. So we'll see where this goes, but it's interesting that they found a new way to do crypto. Oh, one interesting thing: the person who founded this is Bram Cohen, who was the founder of. Bram Cohen is the founder of BitTorrent. So.
Huh. Well, that's an interesting tie-in with a story a little later.
Yes.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Anyway, if you want to learn more about Chia, come to tomshardware.com because we have a ton of content on Chia Coin, including how to farm it, and explains all how it works. And we're keeping up with this because it is a big story in tech right now.
Well, it's something that I'm interested in, and as our regulars know, I am kind of known for throwing a wrench into the works. Like, can I mount an S3 drive and use this? So I definitely, I'm interested. I can't wait to try and push the envelope on what's possible in the next couple of weeks, because now I'm definitely going to give things like that a shot. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, as always, Avram, I appreciate the topic because, as I said, it's something I've been interested in, and I look forward to what we talk about next. Hello YouTube, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Piltch Point with Avram Piltch. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, and of course hit the notification bell since subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. And if you've got topics you'd like us to discuss in the future, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you don't want to follow us on YouTube, that's okay. There's a lot of other ways that you can follow our content. You can find all of that by going to plughitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all the different ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.